What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be coming back with another installment of the True Power series. And when it comes to this series, you know, we've done all like the major heavy hitters. Like we've talked about your Naruto, your Sasuke, your Madara, Minato, all these different characters. However, when it comes to the heart of the True Power series, it's never been about, oh, this character can blow up several thousand continents and this character can blow up multiple dimensions. That's not anything I ever really gave a fuck about, just to be honest with you. When it comes to True Power series, I've always been more interested in, you know, what's the skill set of the character. Like that's what's always made Naruto so damn fascinating. Okay, that's, in my opinion, that's what's made it so fascinating, how versatile these different characters are. And when you start looking at what makes a ninja so dangerous, it isn't just their raw destructive power. And I can think of no character who embodies this more than Shikamaru. However, to say that Shikamaru is just a character that's really intelligent and doesn't have the power to back it up, you are severely mistaken. And that's what I'm gonna show you in this video. So in this latest installment of the True Power series, the Konoha edition, we're gonna be looking at the true power and skill of Shikamaru Nara. So I think most fans would agree Shikamaru for the most part is lazy by nature. However, when push comes to shove, Shikamaru is a very dangerous person to face in battle. We've seen him be able to look at a person's jutsu one time and come up with countermeasures. We've also seen how Shikamaru is a character who, while a fight is going on, he's able to break down jutsu very quickly. We also have to put some respect on Shikamaru's name, because you can make an argument that Shikamaru was probably the smartest person in Konoha when he was a Chunin in part 2. The best way I can put it is this was a character that had all the mental tools there, but part of the reason why Asuma had to guide him was that Shikamaru didn't know how to put all the pieces together. And once we saw him actually go through his grief and get over his mourning, one of the things that we saw was how he was able to come up with a pretty foolproof strategy to take down the Akatsuki members in Hidan and Kakuzu. Even Kakashi was surprised at how quickly Shikamaru was able to adjust to Kakashi being part of the plan and taking into account all of Kakashi's various jutsu that Kakashi can use in battle, which again, to be able to formulate a plan and then change it on the fly to accommodate any type of ninja that's added into your plan, that's pretty freaking impressive. But let's look at it from a different perspective, okay? When it comes to Shikamaru, there's a reason why Naruto, out of anybody that he could have picked, said, not only am I gonna make Shikamaru my right-hand man, but anytime I have these kage conferences, I only need to take Shikamaru. All these other kage take more than one person with them. Naruto just rolls up with Shikamaru. Now, we all know that Naruto's like a walking John Wick. Ain't nobody gonna lay hands on Naruto, but when it comes to Shikamaru, there's a reason why he picks him, because in adulthood, in the Boruto era, Shikamaru is more powerful than any of you guys are giving him credit for. And I've talked about this in a couple of other videos, but essentially you have this moment in the Shikamaru Shinden novel, which takes place after the Mujina Bandits arc, but before the Owl arc of the Boruto manga. In that novel, you have this moment where Shikamaru, he's so skilled and he's powerful enough that when he uses his shadow paralysis jutsu, he's able to get the jutsu done so quickly that none of the 5 kage, Naruto included, none of the 5 kage even realized that he was able to capture them in the jutsu. And to take things a step further, once Shikamaru caught them in the jutsu, as we've seen in the past, if you're strong enough, you can overpower Shikamaru's jutsu. Well, in this case, you weren't about to have none of that. Shikamaru was able to restrain all 5 kage, Naruto included. Naruto, in order to break free of this jutsu, needed to go into his KCM mode in order to break free of Shikamaru's jutsu. So that just shows you right there that even then, like Shikamaru, and there's a line in the novel that even alludes to it, if Shikamaru wanted to, in that moment, he could have killed the 5 kage because they were not able to overpower him. So it's moments like that to where I always say, like, Shikamaru is like a walking checkmate. Like, if you could take Light Yagami from Death Note and Lelouch from Code Geass and give them ninjutsu, you basically get Shikamaru Nara, in my opinion. So on top of having his shadow paralysis jutsu, you also have to take into account that Shikamaru, as a jonin and as an adult, Shikamaru also has mastery over fire release and earth release jutsu, which is pretty interesting when you think about it, because the fact that Shikamaru does know how to use fire release, when you look at the shadow paralysis jutsu, that does give him an opportunity to where he's able to create fires that are able to create new shadows for him to use. The same thing using earth release, where if Shikamaru wanted to, he could manipulate earth release to create extra shadows. So that's one of those things. So if you look at his nature transformations that he has an affinity for and that he's trained to learn, both of those chakra natures are natures that are going to augment what he's able to do with the shadow paralysis jutsu. Now, taking things a step further, a lot of people would say, well, Shikamaru only really knows how to use his Nara clan jutsu, and that's not actually the case. So one of the things that we've seen when it comes to Shikamaru is that Shikamaru does have some ability to use sealing jutsu. We saw this when Shikamaru was able to fight against Kakuzu and Hidan. He was able to whip out a sealing jutsu. The other thing is that Shikamaru also has a level of mastery when it comes to using Asuma's kunai. So this is a character, if he wants to, he can engage in close quarters combat. However, the thing that makes him so dangerous when he uses Asuma's chakra blades is that Shikamaru does not use those blades in order to extend his shadow paralysis jutsu. So for a character like that that's able to think several steps ahead, this makes him even more deadly to fight in battle. So once we start looking at how Shikamaru uses the various jutsu that he has, you're gonna really start seeing the other elements of why the third Hokage, after seeing all these different characters fight in the Chunin exams, you're gonna see why the third Hokage said, I'm gonna bump this guy up to Chunin, and most importantly, you're gonna see why Shikamaru is one of the only 2 people who are confirmed to be 8th Hokage candidates in the Naruto universe. It's only Shikamaru and one other character who have been stated to be 8th Hokage candidates, and once Naruto's taken out the picture in the Boruto manga, it's actually Shikamaru who runs things. We know for a fact that Shikamaru can use the Earth Style Barrier Jutsu, which was a jutsu that you saw all the members of the Shinobi Alliance use when they were trying to stop the Ten Tails Biju Bomb. So in order to use this jutsu, the person that's casting it has to weave a grand total of 10 hand seals, which means that in battle, you gotta be really quick. Your hand seal speed has to be very impressive to be able to pull this off. Otherwise, by the time you get through forming some of those seals, you could already be caught in a trap. Now, once they get done forming the hand seals, they put their hands on the ground, and this creates a giant defensive barricade that's able to manipulate the earth that's already around them. While it isn't necessarily the best defensive jutsu, it's really a jutsu that you use in order to buy time for your allies to escape, or to buy time for you to be able to create a counterattack for when the person breaks through your jutsu. It's still something pretty handy to have. Now, another thing that Shikamaru has is the Shadow Possession Shuriken Jutsu. So essentially with this jutsu, it's something that Shikamaru himself actually invented. There's no other member of the Nara clan that knows how to use this. And this is one of those things, this is one of those reasons why I tell people, like, look, people say Shikamaru is a genius, but I don't think people realize how much of a genius the guy is. The guy had already learned the basic jutsu that his clan had passed down to him. But once his master was dead, he sat down and said, I know our basic jutsu, let me take this and go a step further. And when you get into the Boruto era, he even helped his son Shikadai, with the help of Tamari, to be able to create an entirely different version of the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu. So Shadow Possession Shuriken Jutsu. Basically, Shikamaru is able to either use Asuma's chakra blades, or he's able to use any type of blades that are able to absorb chakra. So once this happens, Shikamaru puts his own chakra into the blade, and then by using this weapons, he's able to throw the weapons to where they can get into the enemy's shadows and hold them down, which allows them to be paralyzed. Now, in order to pierce the shadow, you have to avoid the target just barely. So basically, this jutsu is one of those things where it's basically a feint, where the person thinks they avoided the attack and you're actually striking their shadow. The other part of the brilliance in what Shikamaru did with this jutsu is that he added explosive tags to it. That way Hidan and Kakuzu will be thrown off guard. The only way that you can really break out of this jutsu is that the person has to either have their shadow disrupted, or a third party has to remove those shuriken. However, the thing I really like about this jutsu right here is that when you start talking about the power of shinobi and everything, the one thing you really gotta keep in mind is that every edge, every advantage that you can get in battle, those split seconds, that's what you need. This is one of those jutsu like Zabuza told Kakashi way back in the Land of Waves, where once it's used in battle, you better make sure you kill the person, because if somebody's able to live, then they're gonna be able to counter this jutsu effectively. This is basically setting you up to where you're capturing the target, and you need to have other teammates with you. That way they can actually deliver the killing blow on the person. Now, the Shadow Imitation Jutsu is the jutsu that essentially allows Shikamaru to merge his shadow across the surface and connect to another shadow. Now, once this happens, he's able to control all of their movements. He's able to make them move in whatever direction he wants to. However, we also know from the Shikamaru Hida novel that you have to have a physical shadow to do it. If the person is cloaked in darkness, you can't actually use this jutsu. Now, the only real weakness that this jutsu has is that essentially the length and time that the person is able to keep you under this jutsu is going to be directly correlated to their stamina. So as crazy as this is, when you look at shadow paralysis and everything, Shikamaru's gotten very powerful, and yet at the same time, imagine if somebody like Naruto was taught this jutsu. With Naruto's chakra reserves, imagine the damage Naruto could do with the shadow paralysis jutsu. Now, when you get into the shadow stitching jutsu, this is another jutsu that the Nara clan has that's considered to be a secret technique. So essentially, once you're caught in the shadow paralysis jutsu, they take things a step further, and instead of just immobilizing you with it, they also pierce through your body. So part of the shadows transform into these large needles, and they're all able to be controlled independently by Shikamaru and anybody who knows his jutsu. And so this allows them to attack several targets at once, or it allows them to systematically and methodically pierce all the major joints in the body of whoever it is that they're trying to contain. Now, part of what makes this really deadly, okay, is the fact that Shikamaru, as we saw, Shikamaru only really uses this jutsu as a way to contain the target. However, imagine a bloodlust of Shikamaru. He's already got somebody caught in the shadow paralysis jutsu. So you could have a scenario where Shikamaru, if he breaks character, if he is fighting with the intention to kill, Shikamaru could use this jutsu and he could pierce an artery and the person would bleed out. This is what I mean when I say these characters, it's the hacks nature of the jutsu that really makes them so deadly. It isn't necessarily about the big flashy attacks that blow up mountain ranges. It's the jutsu like this that you never actually see coming that really fascinate me about Naruto characters. So when you get into the shadow strangle jutsu, this is another variation of the shadow possession jutsu. So essentially when this happens, the user is going to extend their shadow across the person's body. And so once this happens, this allows the person to transform the edge of the shadow into fingertips. And so this is how they actually choke the person, or they can just wrap the entire shadow around the person's neck and suffocate them. Now, the other thing about this jutsu is that it doesn't have to necessarily be used for a killing manner. We've also seen it where Shikamaru used this jutsu to break out Tayuya's genjutsu when he broke his own finger. But the other thing that we've also seen, this is a really underrated feat. Shikamaru, when he's fighting against Tsunade Otsutsuki's puppets during the events of Naruto the Last, Shikamaru actually took control of these puppets and used the puppets to fight against Tsunade's puppets. So this is really cool because again, it allows Shikamaru to control inanimate objects in order to fight against opponents. And one final jutsu that Shikamaru has is the shadow grab jutsu, which is basically a jutsu that is going to materialize the shadow, and as he beefs up the power by increasing the amount of chakra that he uses, the shadow becomes hard as steel. Now, much like the shadow possession jutsu, it does take control of the target's shadow and it forces them to move around on the battlefield. However, there's one thing that you have to look at. See, the difference between this and the shadow possession jutsu is that this jutsu does not require Shikamaru to actually move. Shikamaru can actually control the person's movements without having to mimic those movements himself. And so the more chakra he's using, the more control over the body he's going to have, and the more damage he can actually do to you using this jutsu. And so this is another jutsu where if Shikamaru's fighting with a group of people, if Shikamaru's in a situation where he's fighting with somebody like Naruto, he can literally stay exactly where he is, keep his eye on another enemy, manipulate an entirely separate enemy using this jutsu, and run them smack dab into Naruto, who can finish them off with a Rasengan. You know, while Shikamaru is one of those characters where he isn't necessarily the best character that you want to put in a one-on-one situation, Shikamaru is a support character, and if push came to shove, if he had to fight on his own, he does have some jutsu that's going to make him pretty dangerous to fight in a one-on-one setting, especially as Shikamaru has prep time. However, I want to know from you guys, which of Shikamaru's jutsu are you most fascinated with? What do you guys think about that? And if Shikamaru had to fight any of the 5 kage with prep time, which of these kage do you think Shikamaru could fight? And if Shikamaru had to fight any of the 5 kage without prep time, which of the 5 kage do you think Shikamaru could beat? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Have an awesome day, guys.